They skipped my graduation, then asked me for $50,000. I'm Tiffany Gordon, 36. I stood on the stage, diploma trembling in my hands. The spotlight burned warm, but my chest felt cold. 4 years of late nights and caffeine, all for this one moment. I scanned the crowd. 3 empty seats stared back at me, the same seats my parents promised to fill. My throat tightened. Applause roared around me, but none of it was for me. I forced a smile for the camera, pretending I didn't notice. Then my phone buzzed inside my purse. A text. 30 calls. From my parents. From the ones who didn't show. We need to talk, it's urgent. My pride twisted into dread. Something was wrong, and I had no idea how wrong it would get. 5 minutes after I graduated, they made me choose. Them or my future. I grew up in a house where the spotlight favored one sister. Shannon laughed loud and filled every room with noise. My report cards gathered polite nods and quiet smiles. She's got the spark, my father would say, beaming. My mother called me reliable with a tired, loving voice. Those words felt small compared to Shannon's standing ovations. I learned early that quiet achievement left no echo, so I built my life around steady work and stubborn patience. I worked long days, then drove to night classes exhausted. 3 nights a week I sat under law school lights. Weekends belonged to textbooks and coffee-stained notes. Friends went on trips. I earned a trophy of solitude. Birthdays came with brief calls and a hurried, good job. Shannon's Instagram glowed brighter than any of my awards. She posted sparkly centerpieces and captions for hearts. My parents sent heart emojis. My finals got short replies. I saved every extra dollar I could scrape together. $60,000 became my stubborn private safety net. I pictured a small office, a sign with my name. That dream kept me awake through exams and night shifts. I imagined their faces in the auditorium, proud and present. I told myself this degree would finally rewrite our story. I booked the restaurant and bought the emerald dress. I sent my parents the date, the time, directions. They replied, "So proud of you," warm but distracted. Those words warmed nothing. They sounded like something to do. Then Shannon texted, breezy as ever, on a Tuesday. "Throwing a party May 15th, she wrote. "You should come later." I asked her to move it. She laughed it off. "It's just a ceremony," she said. "No big deal, Tiff." The words cut through 4 years of patient sacrifice. I folded my invitations and told myself they'd still come. Have you ever been told your triumphs are just formalities? It only exposed them. I woke before dawn, restless and oddly bright. The emerald dress felt like armor in my hands. I drove to campus with the windows down. The air smelled like summer and possibility. Graduation banners fluttered along the walkways. Families clustered, flowers and balloons everywhere. I smoothed my gown, practiced a steady smile. My heart thudded with the weight of everything. I scanned the crowd as names were called. I hunted for my parents' faces, for Deborah and Edward. Row after row I found strangers in joy. 3 empty seats sat like accusations under the lights. When my name echoed through the hall, I walked slow, heels finding the stage. The applause was polite and automatic, empty. No one from my life cheered louder. I mouthed my mother's name into the crowd. Silence answered me back where love should have been. It was colder than any critique I'd endured. I let the diploma rest heavy against my palm. After photos, I stood outside among laughing families. Someone offered congratulations. I smiled the practice smile. My phone buzzed. I ignored it, then checked. A single Instagram post stopped my breath. Shannon's party photos tiled my screen like proof. There they were, my parents, smiling at her table. A caption read, "Celebrating my big win tonight." My chest dropped in a way words couldn't fix. If you've been through this, you're not alone. It's a strange thing to mourn in public. I felt both furious and completely hollow inside. My hands shook as I locked my phone. I drove without thinking, headlights carving the road. The city blurred. My mind rewound to every slight. Traffic felt irrelevant. Their faces filled my windows. I pulled into a gas station parking lot. 30 missed calls flashed like a warning light. My father's name blinked over and over again. I called back, breath shallow, voice tight. "Tiffany, it's Shannon. She fell. We need you." My stomach dropped into my shoes like lead. The hospital address felt impossibly near and far. I folded the gown in my back seat, hands numb. Hope and betrayal twisted into something I couldn't name. I made myself go inside, despite the noise. Their faces at the reception were worn and small. My mother looked at me like I'd failed her. My father's eyes were desperate and pleading. They told me the cost, numbers like blows. They used the word insurance like an excuse. My throat closed around the word I feared most. They asked me to pay for Shannon's surgery. The evidence waited in my inbox at home. I could feel the shape of betrayal sharpening. I drove to the hospital with my shoulders set. Something inside me hardened in the fluorescent light. Their smiles were on her feed when my name was called. I followed them into the fluorescent glare of the emergency room. The smell of antiseptic felt like a lie. Shannon lay on a stretcher, a shawl over her legs. Her face white, hair stuck to her forehead. My parents hovered, tiny and guilty like shadows. "Tiffany, thank God you're here," my mother said, voice slipping. My father's hands trembled when he reached for mine. "We don't have the money," he said, voice breaking. "She needs surgery. 50,000, maybe more." The number landed like a stone in my chest. 50,000 was almost everything I'd built for myself. 60,000 saved for a small office and a future. I felt the old pattern unfurl in the room. They'd always forgiven Shannon's mistakes with a shrug and a check. They had never treated my sacrifices like an emergency. My mother pressed a phone into my hand, pleading, "Please, Tiffany, you're our only hope." I wanted to answer with fury first. Instead, I opened my email, hands suddenly steady. A forwarded message blinked at me from weeks before. I recognized Shannon's name in the subject line. My stomach turned as I opened the thread. There it was, typed plainly and cruelly. "Skip Tiffany's graduation. She won't mind. This contract matters." My mother's face drained color, the words burning her lips. She said it was fine," my mother stammered. My father looked away, unable to meet my eyes. The room felt small, the fluorescent lights too bright. My hands shook, not from grief but from clarity. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A cold, deliberate tilt to push my moment aside. I remembered every moment she'd laughed at my plans. The evidence sat like a blade in my palm. I thought of the dinners I paid for, of calls unanswered, of applause I'd never heard. I thought of the nights I chose books over life. My chest ached, not from pity but from resolve. "You did this," I said, voice low and even. "You chose her over me. You chose this." My mother sobbed. My father whispered apologies that sounded empty. They kept asking the same impossible thing. "Can you help?" The money was mine, yes, saved for a dream. But the betrayal cut deeper than the cost. I left the room with the email burning in my head. In that cold hallway, a decision began to harden. I could pay and close the chapter with no regrets. Or I could finally tally the cost of being invisible. Either choice would change the shape of my life. My thumb hovered over their number for a long minute. I thought of the ledger of favors and quiet debts. Everything I'd saved felt suddenly like a decision, not security. She didn't trip my day. She pushed it down the stairs. I walked back into the waiting room, steps measured and quiet. My mother's eyes found me first, wide with shame. My father's jaw trembled. He looked like a man emptied. They reached for me with hands that had always taken. "Tiffany," my mother started, voice thin and small. "You have to understand." I held up the phone. "Don't explain, show me the email," I said. They couldn't hide the thread anymore. Not with proof. My mother folded, the color draining from her face. I told them exactly what I had found. "Shannon told you to skip my graduation," I said flatly. "It wasn't an accident, it was planned," I added. Silence filled the corners of the fluorescent room. My father tried to say it was complicated. "It will ruin her career," he pleaded, voice shaking. "She needs this surgery," my mother begged, tears falling. I let the words pass, feeling each one land. Then I made my terms clear, steady and precise. "I'll pay for the surgery," I said, voice even. "But this is the last thing I'll ever do. No calls, no visits, no explanations, no more favors." They cried, begged, and promised change they couldn't prove. Promises had been currency in our house for years. I listened until their voices thinned into exhausted echoes. Then I stood, palms cool, and walked to billing. The hospital terminal glowed like a small altar of choice. I typed numbers with hands that didn't tremble. 50,000 left my account in a single click. The confirmation email pinged. The sound was oddly final. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply exhaled. Back in my car, I opened my phone again. I canceled the dinner reservation I'd made for 4. "Please hold," the voice on the line said. "No," I said, "cancel it, I won't be coming." Then I blocked 3 numbers with a clean, deliberate gesture. My mother's name disappeared from my screen like a fault line. My father's messages went to a folder I never opened. Shannon's profile I unfollowed and muted, removing her echo. The relief that followed was complex, not immediate or loud. It was a small, private clearing inside my chest. I had paid for her surgery, and then I closed the door. If you've ever had to choose yourself, tell me below. The ledger of my life had finally been balanced. I checked my account balance, numbers small and honest. 10,000 stared back like a last breath. It felt terrifying and strangely clean. I thought of every unpaid hour I'd banked. This was the price of closing the ledger. I folded the confirmation into my wallet, like a receipt. Then I drove home under a sky that didn't judge. Silence settled, heavy and finally mine. I funded her surgery, and buried my need for their applause. I left Charlotte at dawn with a rented truck and quiet hands. The city shrank behind me, its expectations left on the map. Miami felt like a dare, hot, loud, and full of possibility. I signed a lease on a small office downtown with 10,000. No fancy sign, just my name on a battered brass plate. I bought a crooked desk, a secondhand chair, a cheap coffee maker. I answered my first client call in a room that smelled new. Single mothers, messy estates, custody fights, work that fit my heart. Each case I won felt like a stitch in a wound. Word spread slowly. Referrals arrived like cautious, hopeful visitors. My mornings began with court filings. My nights with grateful notes. I rebuilt a practice out of grit, not permission slips. I learned to bill my hours and keep my evenings sacred. My first 10 clients paid, then referred 10 more. Each testimonial on my website felt like someone saying I mattered. We celebrated our first paid month with cheap wine in the office. My mornings tasted like possibility, not permission. Sometimes I cried alone, then answered a client, steady-handed. My parents left voicemails I never listened to again. A cousin texted they were sorry, then stopped answering. Shannon lost a major client. The industry whispered about her party. I did not feel triumph or revenge, only a steady clearing. Freedom was quieter than I expected and sharper than relief. I paid her surgery to close the chapter without regret. Then I cut the cords that kept me small. I learned boundaries were not punishments, but promises to myself. Some scars remained, but they reminded me I had chosen me. If you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, tell me your story in the comments below. If you've been through this, you're not alone. The day they skipped me, I stopped skipping myself.